what we're going to talk about?
We're going to talk about sex, baby.
Like us?
Like you and me.
Do you know what we're going to talk about?
We're going to talk about sex.
What about it?
Not having sex.
I have never thought that was very funny.
Hi, I'm Tasha Rose.
I'm Travis Apollo.
This is Mother.
It's radical mothering.
And we're going to talk about sex and abstinence.
Yes. We're going to talk about these things because they happen to be affecting us quite a bit right now.
Right.
Well, the latter more than the former.
Right. So, some of you know and some of you don't know that I was previously married in the Catholic Church long time ago. And that marriage failed. And there are lots of reasons behind it. I'm not going to go into those reasons in this video. But I will let you know we are in the process of an annulment. I got some really good news about it actually in this past week. So we're just going to keep praying about it. But in the meantime, we have had to live as brother and sister.
Yes. And it's it's very important to detail why that is. And I think you used the term when we were talking about this last night. The descriptor, why we are not having sex.
What did I say?
Because, well, okay, so first, I mean, we've spent years in in union.
Mm-hmm.
Without any sacramental blessing on the union, and that is to be sure that is not smiled upon in the Catholic Church,
Right.
in that sense, and there's a reason for that. So at the time, I mean, there was sacramental abstinence happening before that, where you weren't partaking of the Eucharist.
Right.
When we would go to Mass. And even as a baptized and confirmed Catholic, you weren't receiving the Holy Communion because you were out of order with the dictates of the Church, which, I mean, it's more important. The reason why we observe abstinence now is more important than because the Church says so.
Right.
But it's because of what the meaning really is, and it's about so the term. Now back to this term. Sorry for my long explanation, but the term is being set apart.
Right. Oh, that's right. I did say that.
And that has a lot of meaning to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought it up because it has a lot of meaning to you, and this has been
Right.
something that you've thought about since you were a teenage girl.
Right.
A lot more than I ever have.
Well, right, in a lot of different ways too, not just in terms of having sex or not having sex. It's just in general being set apart. It's the whole concept of being in the world but not of the world. You're set apart for the work of God. And right now, that's what we're doing. And we're taking the steps that we need to take to make our marriage a sacramental marriage. But that's a process, and we have to go through it, and it's really difficult. And but with that, there's gonna be graces that come with it too. So, that's what it's eye on the prize, really, and that prize is being a living example of what the marriage in heaven will be.
Part of why I'm so excited to be a Catholic and a faithful now is that that I'm looking to much more important things than I ever used to, things of this world, which are all temporary and don't matter and don't pertain to my eternal soul and my eternal condition. So so that's really exciting. That doesn't mean that foregoing some of the temporal pleasures and satisfactions of this world isn't difficult from time to time. But it definitely makes it a lot easier when we think about things in those terms and we take it seriously. It's something that really spoke, well, I think, to both of us about what the sacrament of marriage is really about. And what he said was it's the closest thing that we can experience in this life to that union in heaven with God. And to just think about that and think about how, as much as I have always given, and we have always given a lot of respect to that union, there are guidelines around it for a reason, and it's to make sure that it is set apart as that very high level of holy engagement, and we need to observe it in that way. And so it's just giving it the due respect. It's what is it? There was a phrase someone said in the That Man Is You program that I was taking. He gave the phraseology that what is and this pertains to women veiling, and it pertains to the tabernacle being veiled and things like that. But what is holy is set apart, or is covered, is veiled, protected. All of that, and so,
and I do veil at Mass too. Well, not just at Mass, just in general in the presence of the Eucharist.
Yeah.
So that's important to me. It always has been.
Yeah, that's
and it's covered not to keep it a secret, but to demonstrate its dignity. Really.
Yeah, and so this is just one. Well, it's a very significant way that we get to really offer up, demonstrate, and give to that union the honor, the dignity, the holiness that it needs to be recognized with.
Right.
And that's important. That's very important. I guess it's supremely important in the world today, nowadays, with everything that is happening regarding sex and whatever it is for anymore. So that's a pretty big deal. And obviously we have very well used it for its procreative purposes in our union, but it goes deeper than that, and so we're demonstrating that. And I think too about this makes me think a little bit about when my cousin was getting married. I was still in college, and I think he and his now wife had just completed college and were getting married at that point. But they shared about like at the reception, at the wedding reception, afterward they shared a little bit about their chastity and how important that was to them in their premarital union and courting. And at that time in college I had not been chaste, and so that was something that I remember really feeling just a tinge of, even though I wasn't Christian at the time, just really understanding that concept from I guess more a secular view, or just like a general, that really is a very important thing, but I hadn't been given the tools yet to really understand the what's and the why for is, like, what is so important about that.
I don't think that it's a secular perspective. I think that's just inherent knowing that this is something that is about dignity of you and dignity of the woman you're going to be married to someday.
Right.
That it's not for outside of marriage.
Yeah, if we really take a look at it, and that's why that's one of the big reasons why the teachings of the Catholic Church really caught my heart and my mind, right from the beginning when I started taking a look, because it is pretty much, obviously that's important.
Right.
And it needs to be treated with that respect.
And that's it's interesting because there are so many obvious truths in the Catholic faith, and and I mean, it can be this, it could be any other topic we could talk about with Catholicism, but there are so many obvious truths, and people in the world like to focus on, um, they like to say that Catholics are super duper repressed, like they've got repressed sexuality, and why are you so obsessed with what other people are doing? And it's like, that's not what it is. It's more an obsession with the logos behind it all, and the knowing that these things, there's a natural order and a natural law behind things like sex. And when you deviate outside of that natural order, bad things happen.
Yeah.
I mean, some good things can happen too. I mean, babies happen. Babies are good things. But there's a lot of really bad that can come along with that though too. And like broken homes
Mm-hmm.
and fatherless homes, and I mean any number of things, diseases and abortion and objectification of women and pornography and all of these things that are social ills that we see really heavy-handed these days. It's all really born out of not paying attention to the inherent knowing that sex outside of sacramental marriage is wrong.
Yeah, yeah, and I think because the world today, so many people in today's culture don't. They get a lot of this education that really speaks opposite of the holiness and the sacred nature of that sexual union. That it to a certain extent, I think a lot of people are struggling with this innate understanding that this is actually a really huge deal. It's actually a really, really big deal, because I mean, why else is there such an emotional involvement with it and things like that happen, and all that kind of thing. So then there's a number of different ways that even that gets twisted. Some people decide to, like, I think to a certain extent I tricked myself into maybe believing that I was in love before I was, because then that meant that I could start to experiment with some of these things that socially, there were others that were experimenting with things sexually. And so if it was, culturally something I was supposed to be doing at the time, but innately it was supposed to be more meaningful. So then it created this, well, I'm just going to make myself believe that I have, different feelings or something about a person, so that then I don't feel like I'm at odds with my my innate sense of what is right.
Right.
And then other than that, I think some people will maybe tend not to even engage because they haven't been taught the rules around it, and are, I don't know, maybe more clear-minded than to trick themselves about whatever they're feeling. But they just avoid it altogether because there aren't these clear rules, or that cultural value and sacredness placed on this sacred thing that we all do have an innate understanding. This is a really big deal. And so then people avoid in getting in any kind of engagements and interactions because there's no way to do it. And then I mean that can be related to the lack of replacement rate of the human race, right?
Right.
And that's something that's actually, looking at statistics, it's really slowing down significantly and is planned to start declining in
Right, because we've
a
stopped
few decades
focusing
or
on
something.
the duality of it. It's unitive and procreative, and only focused on the unitive, and it's not even really unitive.
There's a few different stages of this transition. I think that kind of bears some discussion too. At least that's been significant because we've gone through different stages, and it's been interesting the way that this has felt as we've, I think even as much as 9 or so months ago, we talked about it's possible that we've got some issues that we're going to have to work out here moving forward, depending on how things go and what baptism is and all these different rules. And so we started talking about it. We never shy away from those difficult topics, and that's one thing that's really important about our relationship is we communicate about the things that are tricky. And I think you brought it
Right.
up at first because it was something maybe that was happening, but I mean, we're like, okay, yeah, let's start to figure this out. And so we kept talking with different people about it, and reading and looking at, the catechism, and understanding, okay, what are we looking at? And understanding, what was to come. We had Cecilia on the way, and Cecilia was going to be born, and so there was going to be a natural period of abstinence at that point after she was born, and there was. That was before my baptism.
2 weeks before.
Was it 2?
Yep, she was 2 weeks old at Easter Vigil.
Okay, so 2 weeks. But then it was a week before the Easter Vigil that Tasha went and gave a general confession, which it had been however long, years at that point.
2 years, I think, since I'd gone to confession.
So it'd been a while. But went and made that confession to be able to, so that she could be preparing for the Easter Vigil and the baptism of our family, with receiving communion that week. And I think you went to Mass. We were still going to Mass most every day at that point during Lent. So regular communions that week to help, offer strength and experience that from as holy a place as possible, right? And so then it was, so it wasn't just a natural planned abstinence at that point from giving birth, but it was at that point, I recognized, when she went and gave her confession, she said, well, I'm going to go give my confession on Saturday. And then she was now set apart, even more set apart, in that way, in that holy way, as a further sign that we are abstinent, not just because of the natural waiting, but because of the holy order and the understanding of what needs to happen before union is made. And so that's really when that started. But that was on her side, that I knew she was set apart.
Right.
I was not yet set apart by God, being an unbaptized Christian, being an unbaptized non-Christian at that point. But then a week later, after the Easter Vigil, now I was baptized, and there was a whole lot of feelings that came along with that. And I remember, in the days and the week following, the most remarkable thing was, I know that things are different, but it's also amazing how much life is still the same. But spiritually, I felt so much better.
Right.
I felt really, really good to be in that place, and then really feeling like I was ready to talk a little bit more about this big thing that just happened to me and share it with people who are not religious at all. And I didn't, more toward these stages, so we're still in this place of waiting for the nullity of a former marriage. So that's a different type of setting apart, in the sacramental sense, potentially in the eyes of the church. Although, really what we hope, ends up happening, we pray, is that really it turns out that there was no sacramental marital bond. So in that sense, that's more of a temporary, superficial setting apart that is, for all intents and purposes, in our mind, hopefully not real, but it is, canonically, it is currently a barrier.
Right.
Marriage can be approved.
Right. And like I said, I did
Instituted.
get good news this past week about the annulment, so it's just, we should know more by the end of this month, and it looks really good. That's really as much as I can say right now, and I don't want to say anything else. But there'll be a whole big thing about the annulment process, and by the end of the summer, we have finality to it. So, and it's looking like it'll be that way too. So.
Yeah. So pray for us.
Yes, please. I'm doing the Mary Undoer of Knots novena right now, so that's a good one.
Yeah.
Because it's a big knot. So.
Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap. If you're new here, please subscribe. We'd love to have you stick around and give us a thumbs up. If you have any experience with this, with annulment, with abstinence in marriage, with even, I mean, there's abstinence within natural family planning, I mean, any of it, and you want to talk about it and talk about your struggles and joys and graces that you've experienced with it, please let us know in the comments, and we'd be happy to engage with you on that.
Yes.
We'll see you guys next time. Bye.